Great. We're just going to wait one more minute and then we'll go ahead and get started. Looks like there's more folks trickling in. All right, so it looks like it's 2 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get started just to be respectful of everyone's time. I just wanted to start by saying hello to everyone and welcome to our September CPA learning and listening session. For those of you who I haven't met yet, my name is Anshul Dar. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm a Foster America Fellow with the Workforce Development Team, where I'm working on a few different projects, including our transition to the Foster Parent Application Portal. And we really hope that you'll find this meeting to be a support for you all as we collaborate and just communicate out different updates about the transition to Binti. So I'm joining you all today from Muwekma, Ohlone, and Ramaytush lands here in the Bay Area, and I'm going to be our meeting facilitator. I also just want to quickly give everyone a heads up that this meeting is being recorded and that we'll share the meeting materials with you all following this meeting. So this is a really friendly group, and we hope that you'll all feel comfortable interacting with us throughout the meeting. During this next hour, we're going to cover a few different topics. So we'll have my colleague Ruben Reeves share the new portal timeline with you all. Then Ruben, Matt Kirsch, and Renata Watson will go into an overview of the portal and some highlights there. David Yantes is going to cover some IT updates, and then we'll wrap up with some communication updates from Marge Trudowski and Jason Churchwell, including a really quick poll where we're hoping to get some feedback from you all. And just a few quick housekeeping notes before we start. The first is to please keep yourself on mute if you're not speaking, just so we can limit any background noise. Secondly, we really encourage you to use your emojis if you hear something during the next hour that resonates with you. And finally, if you do have a question to share in the chat, and we want to encourage you to share your questions there after each update, or unmute yourself and speak out loud if you feel comfortable. Just make sure that if you do share a question in the chat, that you send it to everyone and not as a direct message to one person on our team. And that'll help us capture all of your questions. So as most of you know who've been attending our meetings, we have a core group of people who are working behind the scenes on this call to help support you all. And that includes my wonderful colleague, Marge Trudowski. And Marge is going to be monitoring the chat throughout the meeting and just helping to lift up some of the questions that we see from you all there. If we can't address your question in the next hour, we're going to be sure to follow up with more information after this meeting. Now, for the CPAs who are on the line, as you know, we always love to start out our monthly meetings by seeing who's in the virtual room with us today. So please take just 1 minute right now and turn to the chat box to your right to introduce yourselves. And as you do that, we'd love to know 3 things about you in your intro. So the first is your name, the second is your agency, and the third is one possible challenge that you're thinking about with the transition to Binti. So I know that third one might take a little bit of time to process. So I'm going to go ahead and put those 3 prompts into the chat box right now so you have them. And if you all want to take just 1 moment to think about that, and Marge will help share any intros that come through the chat. I just went ahead and put in the prompts. I just want to pause and see, Marge, if there's any intros that you think we should lift up.
We have quite a few people attending. Hey, Deirdre. Jeff from Olive Crest, Catholic Community Services, K Connections, Refugee Northwest, Secret Harbor, we have Ashley from Comprehensive Life. Supporting families who do not feel confident with technology is one of her concerns with Benti. We've got the home study process. We have Robin, the transition period, IT issues with YouthNet with Benti. So that's what I'm seeing so far, Angel.
Great. All right, and we'll let we encourage you to continue to introduce yourselves. Thank you so much, Marge, for sharing a couple of those issues and what's feeling top of mind for everyone as they join us today. We know that we won't get to all of the issues today, but we are taking notes. As I mentioned, there's a core group of us on this call, and we're going to make sure to elevate those for our team after today. So thank you so much for everyone who's here today, for the feedback. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Ruben Reeves, who's going to give us an update on the new portal timeline. Over to you, Ruben.
Thanks, Anshul, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ruben Reeves. My pronouns are him and his, and I am the statewide administrator for licensing division over policy and data, and I am the business owner for this project. So welcome. Just want to thank our CPA partners for joining us. As you know, this is an opportunity to really provide an update on this project and really get your feedback and answer any questions you may have at this time. So want to talk a little bit about the timeline, and I just want to remind folks that we have our foster care portal website, and just within the last couple of days, the new project schedule is updated for more specifics. And if you look on the website, you'll see that we kind of provided an update as kind of the seasons for this year and next year. Right now with our DCYF IT team, they are working on a huge project called a domain migration. It's basically getting out from underneath DSHS. It is kind of our number one priority right now within DCYF, which has taken a little bit longer than anticipated, and it also impacts a lot of the IT projects within DCYF. And so we're not looking to go live with production for state applications until the summer of 2022. So our goal is July 1st of 2022. And again, that is for state applications only. We will have a 90-day, what we call a stabilization period, where we want to make sure that it's working out for state applications before we have our stakeholders use it to, in case there's any issues. So CPAs using Benti to certify their families will not occur until September 1st of 2022. So in about a year. There is a lot of work ahead of us within this next year, which we'll talk about in future slides, but just wanted to provide an update on the timeline. And again, you can find this on the project schedule on the foster care portal website.
Great, thank you, Ruben. And now we're going to hear from Ruben again, along with our colleagues Matt Kirsch and Renata Watson for a portal overview and some highlights.
I think I'm taking this one. Hi, I'm Renata Watson, she, her, they pronouns. I know a lot of you from when I was a regional licenser. It's great to see your names on this meeting. So when we talk about the child placing agencies licensing their homes through the portal, we want to make sure that we have one statewide business process so that there's one process for families and CPAs to submit the licensing paperwork to the state of Washington. Now, CPAs who do not license foster homes, like the ones that specialize in internal or domestic adoptions, will not be using Benti at this time. And there is a WAC change coming up, a revision that noting that the licensing provider portal means the internet connected provider application system used by department and agencies to securely store digital employment and licensing documents and data. We are still working on the naming of the system.
Thanks, Renata. So like Renata said, we have a list of WACs that will be filed hopefully in the next couple of weeks for both our Child Placement Agency chapter, which is 147, our group care chapter, which is 110, 145, and also for our foster families, which is 110, 148. There's a list of licensing or WAC revisions that we have made, and one of them is requiring CPAs to use a licensing provider portal. Like I said, for families to experience, whether it's through a CPA or the state, a very similar process to turn their paperwork in. Next slide.
So just some overview and highlights for this system. CPAs will still have their own unique starting point. Binti, or the online portal, is not intended to change the way that you do business with your families, but it is going to improve the way that the licensing paperwork gets submitted to the state. Each CPA will have their own starting point when they work with families. You can continue doing recruiting the way that you recruit families. And then when your families use Binti to submit the paperwork, each CPA will have their own welcome page where you can include whatever information and links that you want to include. So you can have your own links to your websites where they can access your specific materials or any requirements that you have outside of the state requirements. We know that a lot of CPAs have additional requirements outside of the minimum licensing requirements. So Binti is really to capture those minimum licensing requirement paperwork documentation items that we need. You will be able to customize your portal that the applicants access, including removing the orientation and training stages that the state uses. You can modify those or remove them entirely from your portal that your applicants will be going through. I think this is Matt's section.
All right, my turn. Matt Kirsch, I'm the product owner for the portal. And I'm gonna just share a little bit about some of the forms and information that you might be putting in Binti on behalf, or your families might be putting into Binti. So any information that gets put into, uploaded, or saved in Binti becomes state-owned and discoverable. Basically, any of that data can be, by law, released to the appropriate parties with the appropriate redactions, and that can be requested, whether it's public disclosure, whether it's an attorney related to a case that family may be associated with. It becomes discoverable. So the decision was made that Binti is only going to contain the state-required items. For example, the material, the forms, and the templates. So the personal information form, for example, is a document that's completed in there, and it will be only that information. We know a lot of you capture additional things or have different forms or have other information that is specific to your agency. You will still be able to keep that, but it will be in your system or your practice or your place. Okay, go to the next one. And one of the things that the system does allow us to do is to try to provide some sort of unique identifier or logo or unique way to do this so that you can have maybe a logo or maybe the title of the CPA, the name, you know, some logo or naming option onto some of the forms. We are currently exploring how that would work, and we'll coordinate with Binti on how to do that prior to or during your CPA's onboarding. So for example, take the tiered home study. That form would have the ability to say, let's just say, theoretically speaking, at the top of the page, in addition to the DCYF information and the header, it might have your agency logo attached to it as well. It would be stamped, you know, virtually stamped onto there. One of the things we want to do is we want to make sure there's consistency around that practice so that it's not looking at 15 different versions of the same form, because that becomes an IT issue and that becomes a data issue. And I'm going to throw out an opportunity to you all here that licensing is looking for volunteers from CPAs to review and provide input on those proposed new forms. So there's an email address attached here if you wish to volunteer or have someone from your staff volunteer. And I think that this will be available too during the, this is sent out and this is on the website. You'll also be able to have the email address. It is in the chat as well.
We just want to open it up for any questions. I know that was a lot to take in and process. We just want to make some space. If anyone has any questions at all, feel free to either include them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, can you hear me? It's Nicole. Hi, everyone. So thank you for, sorry, I was impatient with my question, and thank you for responding to that, Renata. I guess I'm curious, kind of understanding that DCYF files are discoverable and that not everything. So your response was that everything that currently is submitted to the regional licensor, and then whatever the regional licensor would be kind of auditing on our checklist would go into Binti. So that does make items discoverable that haven't been discoverable. So I think that's just something for us to kind of track. And I don't have the like brain space in this moment to think through what those things are, but I think that would be helpful to maybe flag what are those unique things that are now discoverable for CPA licensed homes.
Yeah, so an example off the top of my head, historically on the file checklist, you would be writing what day their insurance expires on. And now they will have the opportunity to upload a picture of their insurance and type in the expiration date so that there will be, it will be so much easier for you to see when they're coming expired, and also it will be in there for us to look at instead of when we do the file reviews, asking you to show us the copy of that.
Hi, this is Adrian. I don't know if I missed that, but did you say for the license for an employee?
So what we're talking about right now is the foster home files. So we would not have any employee information in a foster home file.
Okay, thank you.
Adrian, this is Ruben. Let me let me verify. I mean, so today we're talking about CPAs certifying their families through Binti. However, Binti will also be licensing and maintaining CPA agency license themselves and also our group care licenses. So we will be at some point using Binti for all licensing records within LD. So the CPA agency and group care license ability to use Binti will be, we're hoping like right at the beginning of 2023. So Adrian, we will be asking for CPA staff within the portal eventually.
Thank you for that. That's helpful.
There's a question in the chat. Is there a built-in auditing function in Binti? And I'm personally really curious what your definition is of built-in auditing function, because I would love to answer that, but I'm a little worried it could go different ways, and I may give you a wrong answer. Is that possible that you could clarify a little bit?
Hi, that was my question. Thanks for addressing it. I'm just wondering if either on your end or on our end as the certifying agency, if there will be some sort of a reporting function that will automatically show everything that is, like expired or out of date on a particular file, or if that's something that we will be kind of looking at, as we review each file one by one.
It's a big question, and there's a lot of different kind of moving parts to that. But yes, there is what we call it, or what Binti would call expiring documents. So things like driver's licenses are a perfect example. When that is input into the system, it asks for the expiration date. So then it would trigger that notification that that document is expiring. So that's an example of some of the functionality that is in there. Reporting wise, there are other things that you as an agency or as a worker can trigger or can run or can have available to try to, manage those expirations or those dates or that work.
And so the notification would go, so when something expires, like an auto insurance, notification goes directly to the family, directly to the regional licensor, to the CPA, or all three?
Yeah, without getting too far into the weeds, there's what Binti likes to call a drip email. That in the situation of the drip email, it automatically sends the notification to the family, but it also makes a case note automatically into the family's record that says this email was sent, this document is expiring, and it is dated and timed. So that also provides the applicant, or not just the applicant, but the worker with the ability to see. And then there are things that a worker can do on their own dashboard to filter, in other words, narrow down for deadlines and dates and expiring things.
Okay, thank you.
I saw Trisha's question, just assuming that it would be up to the CPA to review entries after they come in to ensure expiration dates are entered accurately. And yes, Binti is not making our licensors obsolete. They still have to look at every single document and make sure that it's accurate. And you may be correcting expiration dates in Binti. But you won't have to put it on 5 different checklists anymore. Yay!
Just going to pause for a moment and see if there's any lingering questions before we move on to our next section. Looks like there's a question from Robin in the chat. Will we have to upload our current files for already licensed homes to Binti?
So we are not transferring files into Binti. We are starting, Binti will start collecting their data from where they are. So they would be putting renewal, their renewal documents. They would be asked to upload things for their renewal, but we would not be asking families to go backwards and put old documents in, or we wouldn't be asking you to be putting old documents in.
However, the home, the information, the provider record about the home will be migrated from FamLink to Binti for an existing home. So we won't have to, we won't be asking you to like retype the whole entire provider information. But the forms and the different documents there that are in your file won't be input.
And Matt, there's a quick question for clarification from Nicole. You said personal information would or wouldn't be part of the file in Binti.
Yeah, that may be my poor choice of words. The personal information form, or as I like to say, the personal information questions will be part of Binti. So that information does go into Binti because the questions are being prompted of the applicant instead of filling out a form.
Okay, it looks like there's
And
a question from Amy.
Yeah, I think we can answer Amy's question about existing homes will be imported from FamLink into Binti. So if I was a worker, I would expect to see all of my existing homes when we go live.
Great, thank you everyone. Looks like there's no more questions coming through the chat. So I think we're ready to move on to our next section, but I just want to thank Ruben, Renata, and Matt for those updates first. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to David Yantis for an IT update. Over to you, David.
Thank you so much. I know there's a lot of questions, and this is the beginning of our answers to all of those around the API. Basically at this point, as you can see, we're doing one, if you will, statewide business process for all of the work that we're doing in Binti, which makes it pretty straightforward associated with the data that we have associated with application programming interface, or an API. That's data going back and forth between two systems. CPAs that have their own IT system that they use for licensing activities, it's a requirement that they use the API to avoid duplicate data entry. So that's a federal CWIS requirement. And I believe, there's been some questions around duplicate data entry. We're not looking to do duplicate data entry. So data going back and forth between the data entered in Binti and becomes available to the CPAs as we move through that licensing process. Currently, the APA is being developed for licensing division for us. And it will be available to the CPAs in the same way, noting that it's just CPA-specific content. So you're just going to be seeing your data back and forth going into your systems available through the CPAs, through the API. As we get into that phase of the implementation, Binti will work with those CPAs to implement that API, so it'll be conversations between Binti with the DCYF IT folks there in support of that, but Binti will work with those CPAs to implement that API, and CPAs are responsible for their development and use of that API. So let me answer this question that I would ask if I were a CPA right now. Is there dollars associated with that? I have already gone to the feds and asked the feds associated with the CPAs getting dollars for that development work, and no, the answer is there is not federal dollars, or there's not dollars associated with that at this point. So I'm just stating that's what the feds have told us at this point in terms of those federal dollars being available. So that's kind of the quick part of it. So we're developing the API. It'll be the same API that's used with the CPAs, filtered for the CPA data, and Binti will be here in support to help those CPAs implement it. So that's what I have for a quick introduction at this point.
Great, thanks, David. I just want to open it up in case anyone has any questions related to David's update that he gave just now related to using the API. Feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question if you feel comfortable. All right, just wait a few more moments in case anyone is still processing and wants to ask any questions. Feel free to drop them in the chat. You can also unmute yourself and ask out loud if you feel comfortable. All right, it looks like there's no questions coming through. So I'm going to go ahead and transition to our next update, which is around communication needs. And I'm going to pass it over to Marge Tranowski and Jason Churchwell for some communication updates. And we'll start with you, Marge.
Thanks, Anshel. Hi, everybody. I'm Marge Tranowski with the Workforce Development Team. And just to quickly talk about communication needs, our website is up to date, and I put the website in the chat room, and it's here on the slide. All the meetings that we've had so far, the recordings are there. So if you missed anything, please go back and check on it or listen to it, and you can get a sense on what we've talked about throughout the fall and this summer. So, and if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A or there with the website, and that is being monitored. And we'll get back to you with any questions that you may have. So that is a really good way to continue with ongoing communication or questions you may have in between the meetings. So with that, I think, Jason.
Yeah, thanks.
Pass it off to you.
All right, Mark. Camera's not really working well today, so I apologize for that. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the online background checks. I sent out a communication in early August, and I just wanted to thank everybody for taking that bold step and trying it out. We have a lot of folks that have jumped on that bandwagon, and we appreciate it. I've gotten a lot of emails, a lot of questions, a lot of, I don't know, I wouldn't say a lot of glitches, but a couple glitches that we're kind of trying to work out in terms of how to get the right information to the right people and whatnot. And so one of the questions that I've been asked several times is how it connects to Binti, and it doesn't. I just want to clarify that the online background check portal has nothing to do with Binti. It's its own kind of entity. The the purpose of it is to really increase timelines around processing the background checks. The background check unit has moved some folks around, and I think that they have a couple vacancies. So I was getting some emails that the timelines for processing backgrounds went up a little bit, and so we're trying to make sure that we keep them short. So by using the online background check portal, it really helps with that. I have a couple guides that are almost finished and ready to go out that will help answer some of the questions that we've been getting and make sure that the information that CPAs need, that they're getting it and how they get it. The portal is pretty finicky in terms of, you can't go back into it. So if an applicant skips a step or doesn't add an email address, then you can't go back and do it. So we'll have a couple guides going out. I also kind of wanted to open it up for questions here today because I have received a lot of questions. So, if we have a moment, we can answer some questions here today. I think there's a couple things in the chat.
Jason, I can answer Jamie's question.
Okay.
Is there going to be a link to the background check system within Venti? And that answer is definitely yes. There will be a link to the online background check in Venti with instructions.
And although it will not automatically copy the background check or automatically email it in Venti, we are asking that they type in their confirmation code. So they'll go to the background check step, and it says, click this link, and then when you come back here, put your code here. So they should hopefully remember to grab that online confirmation code and put it into Venti. So that's the only piece we'll be collecting is that confirmation code.
So is the question around automatically saving or emailing it? Are you wanting basically a filled out BAF to be emailed to you?
That would be really helpful. Prior to using the online background form system, we always got that copy of their background check, which was really helpful for ensuring that we had copies of all of those, previous names, make sure that we know what email address they're using for that to make sure it's the same one that's matching, that they're going to get that confirmation. Any of the background history is included on that as well. And so for the couple of families that are a little less tech savvy or maybe have a different language as their primary language than their licensor, it's been a struggle to get families to save that PDF copy of their background. And once they miss that step, it doesn't seem like they have an ability to go back and get it. And then we lose that piece of information that would normally go in their file.
Okay. All right, I understand the question. I don't know if that's possible because it's not our system, but I will definitely reach out and see what options are available. If there is language barriers, I think those are the kind of the given exceptions. If you want to do the paper BAF in those cases to make sure you have that information, that is totally acceptable.
Thank you. Yeah, it seemed okay. It's just that we include the instructions to ensure that families are saving the PDF, and then I'm noticing that tends to be where it's falling through and missing that step, since it's easy to miss that when you get that confirmation pop up. If it could even be in bigger letters, the PDF option, or when it emails them the confirmation with their code, if perhaps it could send them the PDF copy, that would be great.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
Nicole, I just want to answer your question regarding the funding piece for the API. So that is correct. There's no funding from federal or state funding for the API to work for CPAs at this time. the survey results, I think it was like 35% of our CPAs or 30% have a IT system that will need an API, but at this time there's no funding for the CPAs. David, can you answer Melissa's question as far as paying for the API or what that would look like on the CPA IT team?
So I don't, maybe you can read, I didn't see it there, sorry, the question.
Sorry, Melissa has a question. So we will have to pay for the API? Question mark.
Yes, so that's your, so you don't have to pay, you have to pay for your development of the API. So we will make sure it interfaces back and forth with you if you have your IT system, but your IT, if it's your internal IT system, that's what you have to develop to connect to the API that's there. And you don't have to pay the state for anything. You have to pay for your own development of your own API as it connects to your system.
So basically, we'll make the information available and we will send it, but you have to accept it and receive it. So
yeah, you have to take it. You have to take it and put it into your system. We don't put it into your system for you. You put it into your own system.
Great. Thank you, Marge and Jason, and to Ruben, Renata, and David for weighing in on some of those questions. If you have any more questions related to comms updates, please feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and we'll answer them before moving on. So I'm going to pause and see if anyone has any final questions on this section. All right, if there's no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Marge, who has a really quick poll to share with us all, where we're hoping to get some feedback from you all. So Marge, I'm going to turn it over to you to take the lead on this poll.
Okay, thanks, Anshel. So we've been meeting on a monthly basis with the hopes that Venti would go live earlier than what we've heard today. And so what we want to know from all of you is, how often do you want to meet and continue these conversations around the tiered home study and the new portal system? Our next meeting will be in October, so that is scheduled out. We are going to take November and December off just because of the holidays and vacations. So what we want to know on the poll is, do you want to meet on like a bi-monthly basis, or do you want to continue to meet every other month, or every month like we are doing now? So it'd be every other month or every 30 days. So if you want to think about it, and I believe Matt will put our poll up. And if you don't have any feelings about it right now, you can always get back to us. I can put my email in there, and maybe Anshel, we can put your contact in there just to let both of us know if you guys want to think about it. But if you have a feeling about what you want to do now, let's get the poll up and see what everybody is.
Or they can just send comments to the inbox and we can forward anything related to this to you guys. So there's just one email, might be easier.
And wouldn't you know that I practiced this 3 times last week For some reason, the poll is not loading. My apologies that I cannot get the poll to load. It keeps telling me it's not finding the poll.
Okay, so why don't you guys dump it in the chat room, in the chat box here?
Yeah.
And it looks like so far we're getting more bi-monthly than monthly. Matt will just keep track of the chat box.
That's great. Thanks to everyone who's responding. And like Marge said, one thing we want to mention is that if the consensus is bi-monthly, we'll be sure to send you the info inbox email address that Renata mentioned so that you can contact us between months with any questions. So we want to make sure to keep that communication loop going. Yeah, thanks to everyone that's responding.
We have one here, perhaps bi-monthly for CPAs, and then off months could be for the pilot group. Good suggestion.
Great. Just want to have a pause for a second and make sure everyone had a chance to respond who wanted to respond to this poll question. We'll be looking at the chat after to see what the consensus is. Lots of bi-monthlies.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So we are nearing the end of our time together, and I just want to make sure that anybody who has any questions oh, Matt, it looks like the poll is up. Yay. Okay.
It's up. I'm sorry for the delay, and I'm sorry to ask you to put it in a second time, but this way we can make sure that we record it. I apologize for the technical problem there.
That's
Thanks,
perfect.
Matt.
Thank you, Matt. So if everyone just wants to take a moment to quickly respond to the poll, it'd be great to get some data around that. We have a little bit of a countdown, 47. Oh, okay. Well, 5 minutes, but we'll give it like another maybe 10 seconds for anyone who hasn't responded yet.
I show about 65% are done, so.
Great. So we can go ahead and wrap up. If anybody hasn't had a chance to respond yet, go ahead and respond to the poll, and then we'll go ahead and close it so we can see what the final numbers are. Thank you, Matt. And Sean, I saw your question in the chat. We'll make sure to follow up with you. We're going to send all the meeting materials out, including the recording, the presentation, the notes from this meeting to you all following. As soon as the meeting ends, we'll make sure to put all those together. And within the next week, we'll make sure to send those out to you all. And I'll make sure you're on that list. All right. So Matt, can we go ahead and close the poll? See what the final numbers are. All right. So it looks like the majority said bi-monthly. Yeah, and we'll take a look at the chat as well. But one thing that we did mention was, regardless of what people had suggested, we want to make sure that we have a way to communicate with you all with any updates. So if it's bi-monthly, we'll make sure that we make that email address available, like Renata was saying. As we send those follow-up materials, we'll include that in there. So if you have any questions at all between months, we can include those as well. You can definitely feel free to contact us, and someone is monitoring that inbox and we will respond to your questions. Thank you so much, Matt and Marge. And we are nearing the end of our time together. We have a little over 10 minutes left. So I want to open it up for any final questions that we might have from the group. And at this time, I just want to mention there was a lot of information that we shared with you at this meeting. So feel free to take it in, process. I want to leave a few minutes for any processing. I know a lot of the times we ask for the questions right away, but you might need to think about them for a little bit. And as you do think about those questions, another thing I want to throw out there is if there were any meeting topics that are coming to mind for you that you'd like to get more information on for future meetings that we hold, feel free to drop those in the chat as well. Like we said, there's a core group of us that are going to elevate those with our team. So we'd love to know if there's any issues that are top of mind for you all that we should know about and we should cover in future meetings. Feel free to drop those in the chat.
Also, I just want to, if we decide to go with the every other month as far as meeting with LD staff, I just for CPAs to know, in this next year, especially our 4 pilot CPAs that will be going first, they're going to be meeting with Benti and kind of in a cohorts, 4 or 5 every month or two to kind of map out, like Matt was saying earlier, regarding what you want on your welcome page and your logos and the pre-service training and all that. So I just want to let you know, even we may meet bi-monthly, all the CPAs we working with Benti in this next year before we go live in September. Next September.
Thank you,
And then
Ruben.
I just want to remind folks that if you're interested in looking at the proposed forms and seeing what those changes are to and be a part of the review group to help make sure that we have all the important things on there, email Alexa, and I will be, I'm assuming that there will be a lot of people interested, so probably not everyone is going to be able to, but I'll be working with some of the people who volunteer to look at those forms, and I'll be scheduling some meetings to go over those.
Thanks, Renata. Just want to pause and see if there's any other questions that anyone has. Feel free to drop them in the chat. You can unmute yourself. This is really a space for you all, so we want to make sure that we are able to answer any of your questions now. If not now, we can help to follow up after this meeting. Just looking at the chat, I don't really see anything coming through. Any final questions, suggestions for future meeting topics? Give it another minute. All right. So if there aren't any more questions, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. And I really want to thank all of our presenters. So Ruben, Renata, Matt, David, Marge, and Jason for all their updates. And we're looking forward to seeing you all at our next CPA monthly meeting. It's going to be at the same time, 2 to 3 p.m. on October 25th. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Take care. Bye, everyone.